You should 100% buy this laptop if you consider yourself a professional DJ. So the DJ laptop that you absolutely have to buy right now is the laptop that meets your needs and is useful in your everyday workflow. I'm not here to tell you a specific brand or model. What I'm here to do is break down each component of a laptop, let you know what they do, and where I personally think you should invest the money if you're looking to purchase a new laptop as far as specifications. So let's go. So we're gonna go ahead and get this out of the way first. It's a very controversial topic amongst the DJs in the community, and that's whether you should buy a Mac or a PC. There's definitely pros and cons to both. Me, personally, I use Mac products for my events. So I have MacBooks, I use iPods, iPads, for personal use. I have my AirPods. I'm just wrapped up in that Apple ecosystem. It works really well for me, and I just enjoy using Mac as an overall experience. Super high quality products, and they are really great. But since I am not operating system biased, I do also own a PC. Now my PC for me is what I use to do all my video editing. I play games on it and do a few other things. It's a little more fun than Mac because I have a lot more control over the PC. It's easier to do certain things on it. I can manage it a lot easier. So, look at you in the face and tell you Windows is like not as good as Mac OS, I'd be totally lying. I have Windows 11 on my PC and I absolutely adore it. As far as software for the respective OSs goes, it's kind of almost neck and neck. To be fair, there is a lot more software available, especially freeware for Windows, but that's just because Windows is just a more popular operating system. All right, it's in large enterprise places. A lot of people use it for personal use. Like Windows is just more adopted. It's been way more popular for way more years than Mac. It just is what it is. Then Mac kind of threw a wrench into the whole world of technology and started making their own processors and doing their own thing. Kind of took everything a step back because people had to code for that new processor. But at this point, again, it's 2023. As far as software options go, if you're using any of the major products like Virtual DJ, Serato, Rekordbox, Denim Prime Engine, or even the video editing world with Adobe Premiere Pro, Photoshop, Lightroom, whatever, there are versions available for both Windows and Mac. So for that to be a deciding factor in whether or not you purchase a laptop is kind of weird because usually the software you need can be had on both, or there's a variation of freeware out there for either operating system. At this point, I wouldn't even say anything's better than the other. They're pretty equal. Now, getting back to hardware, again, I'm a firm believer in you should invest money into the hardware and spots on the laptop that are going to help you with your day-to-day operations. We're going to start with processors. At this point in the world, I really don't know of many manufacturers offering single core processors, but if there is, that would be my recommendation, is to not buy one. You see, processors are the brain of your computer. Everything that happens in that machine is sent to the processor and sent back out. It gives all the commands to the hard drive, the memory, the video card. It does all the work. So more cores equals more work capability, right? You have to think of it as a pipe. If you have one pipe going in and going out, that's as fast as the data can go. But if you have 2 or 4, 6, 8, or even 10 pipes going in and 10 pipes coming out, that's just a lot more data that can go in and out of the laptop to help it be more efficient and consume less power. Not that you should be on a battery while you're DJing, but if the power supply breaks for whatever reason, usually a multi-core laptop's better to have. They're a little more efficient, especially the ones from Mac. They are pretty awesome and super power efficient. But the processor is the brain. So when you're looking at buying a new laptop for DJing, you really want to look at the processor, right? It's the brains of the operation. It does all the calculations. If you're looking at a Mac, I personally would never go anything lower than the M2 Pro or the M1 Pro. Either one of those chips is really, really good. Or if you have an Intel-based Mac, some of the late 2018, 2019, 2020 models are really great. They had like 6-core i9s. But you do definitely want to invest money into a processor. Processors, again, they're the glue that holds it all together. They're the brains. They do all the thinking. So you definitely want to make sure that if you have a budget, that a good portion of that budget goes to a really good processor. The next piece of hardware we're going to talk about is RAM. That's Random Access Memory. Coincidentally, also the name of the best Daft Punk album I think they've ever produced. But RAM is super important. When you open a program and it starts to operate, it's living in the RAM world, okay? So depending on how much RAM you have in your computer is how many programs you can simultaneously have open and how many things you can do at one time. So the program opens, it goes to the RAM. When you send that program any type of input or communication, it goes from the RAM to the processor and then does what it needs to do with the other components in the laptop. But what's really important is you have to remember operating systems take a lot of RAM. On Mac, you can't go below 8 gigabytes, which is awesome. Their operating system runs a little bit leaner, so 8 gigabytes typically kind of gets away and is okay. But on a PC, 8 gigabytes is good, but it's kind of pushing it. I think the safe space for anybody, just in general, is 16 gigabytes of RAM. If it's within your budget to go double that to 32, 64, whatever the case may be, the highest number you can go, that's awesome. You can never go wrong buying more RAM. RAM is super important. It keeps things flowing smoothly, and it generally helps the system run cooler, more efficient when it has more RAM, because it's not thinking as hard, because it's not trying to figure out what to do with things that aren't being used and things that are currently trying to be used. It's able to facilitate all those processes without slowing your computer down. We've talked about processors, we've talked about RAM. I'm gonna follow up with hard drives. Now again, Mac makes this really easy because they only offer solid state drive. But if you're in the market for a new PC and you're shopping around, one of the things you want to pay attention to is what type of hard drive is in this laptop. If it's a rotational drive, which is your traditional spinning drive, usually notated on a spec sheet as an HDD, at this point in time in life, you kind of want to get away from them. Solid state drives are relatively cheap, especially comparing them to the prices they were about a decade ago. So when you're looking for a laptop, you definitely will look for a solid state drive, an SSD. What they are, just to give you perspective, they're kind of like an SD card, where there's nothing rotational, they just exist and data flows in and out of them. The reason why they're better is the hard drive isn't working as hard to find your data. On a traditional hard drive, the rotating type, you have a little arm that scans across the disk, so whenever you want to open a program or look for a file or open something on your hard drive, it has to have the hard drive spin and the little needle has to find it and then it needs to go and then it does what you need it to do. On an SSD, it's just a constant flow of data going in and out because there's no rotational parts. Another great thing about SSDs is they're a lot harder to break because nothing moves. A traditional hard drive, if you drop your laptop, we're all guilty of it. You could shake something up, it could disable the drive. Not only will that make your laptop inoperable, but there's potential for data loss. And I know for one, I don't want any of my stuff lost, and you shouldn't either. So when you're looking at hard drives, you definitely want to make sure you're getting a solid state. Now the size of the hard drive is completely up to you. Most manufacturers for a decent laptop that's considered performance will not sell you anything below 128 gigabytes. That is totally fine. Operating systems usually take between 4 and 8 gigabytes of hard drive space, which if you have 120 gigs, it leaves you completely open with 120 gigabytes of storage. For me personally, I run a terabyte in my hard drives. That's just because I do video editing. Sometimes I'm really lazy. I don't feel like putting my videos on an external. They live on my laptop until I recognize and realize they've been there forever and I delete them. However, if you are doing a lot of things, you're doing a lot of file work, or you're keeping your music database internal, then my recommendation to you would be at least a minimum of 1 terabyte if that fits your needs, or if you need more, you can obviously option up to larger solid state drives. But we're not at that point now where larger solid state drives are cheap. They are still very expensive. So once you break the 1 terabyte range, you start looking into a little bit more money, and you have to see if that's worth it, right? So one thing we're going to talk about in this series is external hard drives, why I use one, but I'll break them down for you and explain the benefits, the pros, and the cons. But for my particular workflow, an external hard drive just works 1,000 times better for me, so that's what I use. But if you're an internal hard drive user, then you definitely want to make sure that you get a large enough disk that can fully utilize your operating system, all of your music, plus any programs that you want to run, and you want buffer. You never want to fill your disk up 100%, whether it's rotational or solid state drive. 90 to 100% is a really bad number. So you want to make sure you have something that can hold all your programs and all your data without straining the system too much, because that can cause issues, especially with laptop performance, once you start hitting that breaking point of closing in the space on your hard drive. And last, but of course not least, we're gonna talk about video cards. A lot of people don't think of this, but video cards in a laptop or desktop, whatever you're doing, are tremendously helpful and will increase the speed of your system tenfold. So basically what a video card does is if you don't have one, it's on your motherboard, your processor, to create the video display, shoot it out to whatever resolution you need, and be able to work. A video card takes all those processes off the main processor and puts them into a separate processor with its own RAM. It frees up a lot of resources on your PC or Mac and allows your PC to run a lot faster because all the stuff that it would normally have to think about in terms of video, it no longer has to do. All that weight gets put on the video card. Now, again, I keep going back to this, but Mac makes it really simple. Mac uses internal GPUs built into their processors, the whole M1, M2 thing, so there's really not much you have to figure out there. When it comes to laptops, the higher end laptops you go, you can typically choose a video card in those laptops. If it's within your budget and you're capable of doing that, then I would highly, highly recommend getting something with a really good video card. It'll definitely be less taxing on the overall performance of your laptop and produce a lot better results. So Seth, where should I spend my hard-earned money? When I'm budgeting a laptop, how much budget should I appropriate to each one of those categories? It's really simple. First and foremost, look at your budget and look for something with 32 gigabytes of RAM. Even if that means that you have to minimize the quality or the size of another component in the laptop, you can never go wrong with RAM. RAM helps you do multiple things at once. I can't think of a time on my laptop where I'm just doing one thing. RAM is awesome. Splurge for the RAM. I promise you, you will not be mad. Next is processor. So when you're looking at a processor, if you spent a big part of your budget on RAM and you don't really have a lot left over, you can't get the best processor, something mid-tier is fine. You definitely want to stay away from single core processors. Do not go that route. It is totally not worth it in 2023 to get a single core processor. You want to look for a multi-core processor. On the flip side to that is not every software uses every core of your processor. So I don't want to give you the wrong impression by saying you get this multi-core processor and everything's just going to work fantastic and great. That's not the truth. If the program is coded for it, I believe Serato is, I think Adobe is, most of their suite, that's fine. They're going to run super efficient and fast, but not every program that you download is going to be useful on a multi-core processor, but it's still nice to have. 100% stay away from single cores. Even a slower multi-core is still better than the fastest single core. Then when we talk about hard drives, again, stay away from rotational drives, and then you have to be conscious of your budget when you're figuring out if you need to use that internal hard drive or not. That's a big key factor. If you're not going to need a lot of space, get enough to where you can comfortably work without going over the space that you're given. If you need a lot of space, then you're going to have to forego something unless you have a limitless budget. Might bring the RAM down to 16 gigs to get you the hard drive space you need. Just remember that the hard drive really comes down to what you need space-wise, and just make sure it's an SSD. For Christ's sake, it's 2023. No more rotational hard drives. And then, after all that is said and done, if you still have a little bit of chunk of change left over, a little bit of cheddar, then look at a video card. Look for a laptop that has an NVIDIA, an ATI, something separate from the main board that can help you with them video processes. It's not just for external video too. Video cards work for the internal views as well. Overall, less taxing on your processor and RAM. It handles a lot of it on its end. If you can afford it, I would definitely splurge and get a video card. But remember, the hierarchy goes RAM, processor, hard drive, video card. That's it. And you also have to remember, your system will only be as fast as its slowest component. Okay, you can have the best RAM in the world, the most awesome kick-ass video card, the biggest, best hard drive in the world, and a crappy processor, and you'll be bottlenecked by that crappy processor. Everything is relative when it comes to hardware and technology. So make sure that you're keeping everything at least on an even scale. If you're going to go up on one component, make sure not to go too low on the other, because at the end of the day, they all affect each other. And then one last thing I want to touch on is I/O, and that's the ins and outs of your computer. When you're looking for a laptop that fits your workflow, you have to look and see what type of ports that laptop has on it, and does it have a sufficient amount of ports for what you need. Now, keep going back to this, but if you get a MacBook, they have a pretty great array of ports. They have 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, an HDMI, an SD card reader, and a MagSafe power adapter. MagSafe is my favorite because you can't really break it, but those are the ports that are available on a Mac. When you start looking into PCs, you'll notice that some laptops come with 2 USB-A ports, a USB 3 and a USB-C. Some come with Thunderbolt. If you have no idea what any of that means, we're going to cover it in a future episode. But you want to make sure that whatever laptop you buy has a good amount of ports that will work for your workflow, because me personally, I'm not a fan of any type of hub. I don't care if it's powered. I don't care if Elon Musk made it himself and it's the greatest thing since whatever. I don't like hubs. I think they're terrible. They're just one more point that can break in a system and ruin your performance. I'm a big guy of cable all the way, straight from the port to the device. Of course, do you. I'm not here to shove me down your throat, but I am here to say that hubs are kind of bad. So when you're looking for a laptop to use, again, you want to make sure it has sufficient I/O because you don't want to use adapters or hubs or get yourself into a mess with any of that. Keep in mind, guys, for those of you looking at PCs, the cheaper the laptop, generally, the cheaper the components, and that can pose an issue too, right? You don't want to buy something cheap because when it's made cheap, it tends to break a little faster. The nice part about MacBooks is all the hardware is the standard, so when you get a lower spec laptop, you're still getting really awesome components, just at lower speeds, lower spec. When you're looking at a PC, a lot of the times cheaper PCs use really cheap components, and that could spell disaster for anyone in the performance field. Because the one thing you don't want to happen is have a piece of hardware fail at an event, because that's not fun for you or the crowd that's enjoying what you're doing. And for Christ's sakes, if you're a PC user, turn off automatic updates. Even if you're a Mac guy, turn off automatic updates. Don't let it update automatically. Look at the updates, see what they do, see if they'll affect you, and then update. The last thing you want is for your computer to update in the middle of the event, right before you start, whatever the case may be. It's a really bad look for you, and it's something that's easily avoidable. So again, don't be stupid. Turn off automatic updates, do them manually, but make sure you do them because they're super important. So, what DJ laptop should I buy in 2023? I just explained it to you. Whatever fits within your budget and is great for your specific workflow. Keep in mind, you have to pick and choose what you're going to do with this hardware as well. If you're going to do your DJ performances, plus your video editing, plus a little bit of gaming or whatever else, you want it to be really, really robust. If you're just using it for DJ events, doesn't matter whether it's touching the internet or not. You still want good RAM, good processor, whatever hard drive space you need, and preferably a video card. So for all those guys that are like, oh, I don't need a really high-end PC or Mac because I never touch the internet, all I do is DJ with it, it's bullshit, okay? 100% bullshit. The specs still matter whether you're using it all day, every day or not. But if you are using it for multiple things, especially video editing, that can be really intense. You always want to stay more towards the high end of the spectrum. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but it is what it is. Remember, cheap hardware equals cheap results. Are you a cheap DJ? I'm not. I hope you aren't either. Keep that in mind when you're buying stuff. So if you managed to make it all the way through this video, my first words to you are thank you. I really appreciate it. You can look forward to more content on this channel just like this. I'm here to teach you all about the ins and outs of all the things we use as working event DJs without a biased opinion. I will always be honest with you and let you know what I think and what I use. At the end of the day, I ultimately just want to give you guys all the information I possibly can for you to make a choice that's going to work really well for you. So I hope you subscribe. I hope you check out the rest of the videos on this channel. Until next time, peace. I'm out. Remember, don't be an idiot. Shut off your updates.